Таны төлөө эх орн чинь юу хийж чадах вэ гэж асуухаас өмнө та өөрөө эх орныхон төлөө юу хийж чадах вэ гэж асуу. Jan Jargal. Сайн байцгаана уу хүнд үзэгчдээ. Өнөөдөр ороо манай дефакто нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор Германы элчин сайд Pius Fischer оролцож байна. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Jargal.
Пиус Фишер 1948 онд Аугсбург хот төрсөн эхнэр нэг хүүхэдтэй. 1974-өөс 1976 онд эдийн засгийн шинжлэх ухааны чиглэлээр суралцсан мастер зэрэг хамгаалсан. 1979-өөс 1982 онд Шинэ Дели хот дох Германы элчин сайдын яам. 1985-аас 1988 онд Ватикан дох Германы элчин сайдын яам. 1988-аас 1992 онд Лос Анжелес хот дох Германы консулын газар. 1996-аас 2001 онд Гвиней, Серра Леоне улс дэх Германы элчин сайдаар ажиллаж байсан. 2004-өөс 2007 онд Камбож улс дэх Германы элчин сайд, 2007 оноос хойш Монгол улс дэх Германы элчин сайдаар ажиллаж байна.
Thank you for coming to my program.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, before we go to the deep of our conversation, I will ask you, what makes you keeping so strong all the time? What kind of sport do you do?
I'm very fond of outdoors, particularly of mountaineering, skiing, but also horse riding. Occasionally I play also tennis. And here in Mongolia I made it actually a habit to go every Sunday hiking in the mountains surrounding Ulaanbaatar.
And skiing?
Skiing during winter time. Of course, the ski resort is a big asset now to Ulaanbaatar, but compared to alpine standards, the slopes are very modest, and so usually I prefer to ski in the Alps.
Every Sunday I see you on the slope, and you are the best, one of the best skiers on this slope. How come?
Thank you.
How many years have you been skiing in Alps? Which part?
Normally I ski in Switzerland, but I do it also in Germany, in Austria. I did it in France and in Italy. But every year I go to the Engadin in Switzerland, and this is the area I know best for skiing, and there are famous peaks like Pitzkorvac, Pitzlagalp, Diavolezza and others where I used to ski.
Do you exercise every day?
No, I don't. Unfortunately, I should do it because in my age you have to exercise regularly to keep fit. So I do a little bit of gymnastics twice a week, and every Sunday I go hiking or skiing.
So for hiking, yes, in Mongolia, which mountains you like the most around Ulaanbaatar?
Well, of course, the most beautiful mountains are in the Altai mountains, and in the Tavanbokt Altai I climbed also Huiten-Ul and Malchin-Ul, and this is certainly the most spectacular mountainside here in Mongolia. Around Ulaanbaatar, I like particularly the mountains in the Terelch because it's a very rocky area. And we discovered areas there where I'm sure that very few Mongolians, except for the herders living in the Terelch, have gone so far. And also Tsetsegon many times, I think at least 24 or 36 times I've been up on Tsetsegon during winter, spring and summer.
Over 20 times you were on Tsetsegon.
Yeah.
Wow, impressive.
Yeah.
Well, Ambassador, you are German career diplomat, and out of your list where you have been working, I was so curious to know you were working in Vatican, which is Holy See, how you call it. Tell us, share us with that. How was it like to work there, and what is your mission there?
The Vatican, of course, is a very special mission. And amongst all the embassy, Germany entertains around the world, and we have about 120 embassies. This is the oldest embassy we have.
How many hundred years?
It goes back actually to the 17th century that Germany entertains diplomatic relations with the Holy See. And until 1933, actually, there were always two German missions to the Holy See. It was Prussia and it was Bavaria who entertained diplomatic relations with the Holy See. And only once the new agreement has been signed between the German Empire at the time and the Holy See, we had one mission there. And traditionally, all the ambassadors which were sent from Germany to the Holy See were of high rank. My ambassador, I was second secretary at our embassy at the time, and my ambassador was the former foreign secretary in our ministry, and he was ambassador in Washington before he became ambassador to the Holy See.
To Germany get together, where you were?
In 1989, when the wall came down, I was in Los Angeles, in California, and I still remember we were glued actually to the television screen. And even though the American media normally do not report a lot about foreign policy affairs, yes, but if there is something happening in the world of major importance, then all the power and all the focus of the American media is on this. And I remember they sent their best correspondents to Berlin to report directly from the Berlin Wall, and there were Peter Jennings and many other famous anchormen.
Personally, how you were taking it?
We were, of course, very moved by this moment, because nobody in Germany expected that this would happen.
Which year there was first the President Kennedy in 1961, I believe, and then later on President Reagan was speaking beyond the wall towards Russia.
Yeah, his words actually, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down the wall. Actually, they were in the ears of all the Germans, and that this became true so soon after, really nobody expected.
You were ambassador to Cambodia before coming to Mongolia. Why Mongolia? It's a choice, right? You guys as ambassador.
We have a system where you can apply for certain postings which will become available, because we have a rotation period of 3 years. So every 3 years, an ambassador has to move to another assignment. And I applied for about 8 or 9 different postings in Asia, because Asia is the region of preference for me, and particularly all the countries around China, because the economic and political rise of China is, to me, one of the most fascinating political phenomena in diplomacy. And particularly in the countries around China, you can observe actually the consequences of these changes in China.
Indeed.
So Mongolia was one of the choices, and the personnel division decided to send me to Mongolia. I still remember it was on a Friday afternoon that I cleared my desk in Phnom Penh in Cambodia, and on this Monday morning after, I started my work here in Ulaanbaatar. There was nothing in between, just the weekend.
Yeah. Whoa.
And Cambodia, as you know, is a tropical country, and Ulaanbaatar is known to be the coldest capital of the world. So it was quite a change, yeah. But luckily it was during summertime.
What kind of requirements for German diplomats in terms of language? Which languages you must speak?
So a compulsory requirement is a sufficient command of English and French. If you know other languages, it's an asset, but it's not a requirement. During my diplomatic career, I first learned Hindi, and my first posting was India. But unfortunately, since then, I didn't have any opportunity to use my Hindi, so I could still read it to some extent, but I couldn't speak it anymore. And later on, when I was posted to the Holy See in Rome, I learned, of course, Italian.
Well, just every time when I meet German diplomats, they speak this both language perfect. And along with your languages, three most spoken language in Europe and in the world, in fact. Well, so you are in Mongolia. How do you find the relationship between Mongolia and Germany today at the moment?
At the moment, I think these relations are at a very crucial point. Of course, we have excellent political relations with Mongolia, but this was not reflected so far in the economic field, because the trade figures are showing that the trade volume of Germany and Mongolia is just on the order of 100 million euro, which would be about 140 million US dollars. And this is actually peanuts for Germany, which is the wise world export champion. We are the biggest export nation after China, and Mongolia is one of the 10 resource richest countries of the world. So the present trade volume is far below the potential of our two countries. Right now, this could change if actually this German mining consortium, which is on the short list for Tavantoygoi, for East Zank, would get the contract. I am sure that this would give a whole new dimension
you talk
to
about
German
BBM?
Mongolian. It's BBM, yeah.
A consortium, who is there inside?
In this consortium, so far it's a loose grouping of companies, but if they get the contract, they would of course formalize their cooperation. There is RWE, which is one of the biggest power producers in Germany, and RWE is also one of the biggest lignite miners in Germany. RWE, for example, is mining every year some 100 million tons of brown coal, of lignite. This is, at the moment, 5 times as much as the whole of Mongolia is producing and exporting. I think Mongolia is exporting or was exporting in 2010 some 16 million tons and plus 5 million tons for domestic consumption.
And they produce where, in Germany or all around the world?
And they produce in Germany. All of their open pit mines are in Germany.
Well, so you have so much brown coal?
Yeah, we are very rich in brown coal, but this is actually one of the very few natural resources we have in Germany. Otherwise, the German economy depends more actually on its human capital than on natural resources. And the German industry is known for actually its expertise in all areas of technology.
Well, we wish this. At which level do things go now? Is it is it final tender for operation or production, or which part of this big project?
This is actually the tender for contract mining at the eastern part of Tavantoygoi, but I think this is up to those who compare the bids now to decide which company is best.
In case if they will win, job. They will dig, produce, take it out, wash probably, then send it, or it will be further processing?
Of course, the plan is in the long run to bring in all the downstream activities of coal processing, and this is also the declared objective of the Mongolian government, not to export coal as raw coal, but to create added value inside the borders of Mongolia, to create jobs here, and to export actually these products like coking coal, or produce electricity from coal, export the electricity, coal liquefaction, coal gasification. All these are options downstream.
And there is also German, I think, involvement in laying the railroads from Chinese border to particular mining sites.
There was some German involvement until actually the new railway strategy has been adopted, which is based on the principle to expand the Mongolian railway network exclusively in wide gauge technology. So some of these private projects to build direct rail connections from some of the deposits in the South Gobi to the Chinese border have been put on ice.
Was it?
And
we still expect now they will put a railroad until this main road they will make with a Russian standard.
I think this railway strategy, which was adopted by the Mongolian government and the Ichhural, the Mongolian parliament, has two clear priorities. First, everything should be done in wide gauge technology, and secondly, priority should be given to west-east connection, with the objective actually to create a second exit for Mongolian commodities, particularly coal, through the East Russian ports towards Japan and Korea. And geopolitically, economically, this makes sense. Actually, the question is just whether the transportation over such a long distance will not be too expensive. But this has to be sorted out. And but in principle, I think Mongolia should not be dependent on one country only if it comes to its exports.
Well, still, in public, we thought this railroad will be done by narrow Chinese railway all the way to Tawan from south. And you're saying that it is stopped or frozen.
It's at least put on ice. I think sooner or later this project will come up again, and it will be, so to say, not the first but the second priority.
Okay. Well, what are other fields, sectors, potential that to grow economic relations between two countries?
Deutsche Bank, as you know, has been selected as global coordinator together with Goldman Sachs for the IPO of Erdenes Tavan-Toygoi. And this is a major...
Have they started the work?
Not yet. Actually, the contract still has to be formalized. The decision as such has been taken, but the contract still has to be formalized. And then they'll take up their work. And there is a very ambitious time schedule. I understand that the IPO should be done in the first quarter of 2012.
With BBM and Deutsche Bank coming to Mongolia, that will be changing this landscape you are describing.
This was exactly what I wanted to say. If these two things are going to happen, this will change dramatically German-Mongolian economic relations.
Okay. Now let's talk about the people's, the ordinary people's relations. And we also say in Mongolia that we have so many per capita German-speaking people, probably comparable to any other Asian countries. How do you see that, having Mongolians speaking German and Mongolians living in Germany?
I think we have a very special relationship, and a long history and tradition of German-Mongolian relations. Already in the 20s of the last century, when the first Mongolian students who were sent abroad for their studies went to Germany. One of the returnees was the later national poet of Mongolia, Natzak Dorj. He was one of those students who were sent to Germany. Then during the communist period, relations with Germany became somewhat difficult. It was in 1950 that the GDR established diplomatic relations with the People's Republic of Mongolia at the time, and 1974 the Federal Republic of Germany. And during that time, many Mongolian students have been sent for their training, for their studies to East Germany in particular.
Do you have statistics?
Unfortunately not. We only know that approximately 30,000 Mongolians speak German and have been trained in
several
Germany.
Generations.
And this means that more than 1% of the Mongolian population speaks Germany. This is a situation we have in no other Asian country.
And do you have a particular attention to this?
We try, of course, to develop this human capital and this potential. We are offering German language courses through the Goethe Institute here in Ulaanbaatar. We have 4 lecturers from the German Academic Exchange Service at various Mongolian universities. And we are working also with some of the schools, for example, the School 38, which has been renamed into Alexander von Humboldt Schule. One of the schools which offer German as first foreign language from the first until the last class, as does the Goethe School, which is a private school also here in Ulaanbaatar.
There is certain people-to-people bridges, organizations in between two countries, those in Mongolia. What kind of good organizations?
There are a number of organizations, and they help, for example, returnees, Mongolians who completed their studies in Germany to reintegrate into the Mongolian society, and they help actually them finding jobs in companies, in government agencies. And there are many examples actually of Mongolian alumni which are now in top positions in Mongolia. The Minister of Defense, he is fluent in German.
Yes.
He has been...
He was my guest here.
He was your guest as well. He has been nominated by the Prime Minister just 10 days ago as coordinator for German-Mongolian affairs. But we have also, for example, Mr. Terbish Takva, Member of Parliament, who is also the chairman of the Mongolian-German Parliamentary Friendship Group, and many others in all walks of life. We even have Mongolian artists who became very successful in Germany. Galsan Chinak, I would like to name. Yes. He actually won many literary prizes in Germany. He writes and he writes also his poems in German language. He's so proficient in the German language that he has a better command over this language than many Germans.
Wonderful. I think it's for many years, and this route goes very deep, and I'm so thankful for that, because we are connected for almost, there will be soon 100 years of these relations from the first time we sent students to Germany.
Indeed. Of course, one could trace German-Mongolia history even further back. 1241, there was this famous battle at Liegnitz, which is now Poland, which at the time was Germany. And it was a battle between the Mongolian army and a German-Polish army. And since then, we have been in direct contact with the Mongolian Empire, but one could even trace it back further to the Hunnitic times. Because in the German national epos, in the Nibelungen saga, there appears a Hunnitic king by the name of Attila. And of course, Attila can be traced back also to the Huns here in Mongolia. So I think it's a very long history, even though, of course, in Hunnitic times, it's very difficult to differentiate what is myth, what is legend, and what are historic facts.
Yeah, it's such a great things. And now we have also many Germans working in Mongolia as well.
We have a small, I would say, German community working here. It's mainly experts working for the GIZ, the German Agency for Technical Cooperation. It was GTZ. Now, actually, they merged with the German Development Service and with Invent, and now they call themselves GIZ.
Will it increase their program? Or the size of the program? Or?
I think it's just a merger of three different organizations under one roof, so it will not increase the volume. But if we are talking about the volume, Germany used to be number 2 as development partner after Japan for Mongolia.
For Mongolia, 4 years.
Maybe now with the Millennium Challenge Compact, we have been overtaken by the United States as development partner.
Ambassador, there is a question I cannot but ask you about Mr. Hort, who is arrested in England, and I understand it is by the request of German government. Tell us, what is this about?
It's not by request of the German government, it's by request actually of the German prosecutor's office.
Which is separate than government.
Which is completely separate. And there have been so many wrong and false, even absurd articles in the Mongolian press, which to my opinion reveal also a lack of the understanding of basic concepts of democracy. And in any democracy, there should be a clear division actually between the judiciary, the executive, which is the government, and the legislative, which is the parliament, which means that the government, the executive, does not give instructions to the judiciary, and that's why we also don't comment normally judicial affairs, because this is the exclusive domain and competency of the German courts, and we regard this as a legal case, not as a political case.
And do you think they will now deport him from UK to Germany?
I am not a prophet. This is completely up to the British courts how they're going to decide about this case.
Okay, let's back to the economic cooperation. A couple months ago, there was a wonderful for Mongolian public information about taking German European standard to Mongolia. Tell us about that, please.
In the last year, actually, we had negotiations between the European Union and Mongolia on the signing of a partnership and cooperation agreement. This partnership and cooperation agreement has now been initialed and will be signed most probably very soon. And one actually of the articles of this agreement provides for a closer cooperation between the European Union and Mongolia on the introduction of European norms and standards here in Mongolia. And I think particularly with the East European countries who became members of the European Union, we have experiences how to switch from the old standards of the Comecon to the new standards of the European Union. And these experiences could be applied to the Mongolian context. We are talking about technical standards, environmental standards, social and labor standards, and standards also insofar as governance is concerned.
How far things go now, so far?
So we already started in this area through our German GIZ, and a team of Mongolian experts has been jointly invited by Germany and the Czech Republic to visit the Czech Republic. This Mongolian delegation was led by First Deputy Prime Minister Altan Khujag. And this was a first beginning actually to study European norms and standards and to bring them to Mongolia. There is a program also which will be financed by the EU Commission with some 7-8 million euro, which will help actually to bring these standards to Mongolia.
Well, hopefully it will happen fast, soon, and we will see the result.
Yeah, of course, we are under enormous time pressure because these standards are needed in every way, and our experts really are under enormous pressure to produce results.
Well, this the way how our roads are made, how our people, particularly from the city, mismanaging their roads, the planning of the city, the way how we construct buildings on the middle of the road, all this together requires even a serious standard, and very soon.
Building standards is also very important, no doubt. To a limited extent, we try to introduce particularly standards for energy efficient construction, for houses with better insulation, so that less energy is wasted and consumed here in Ulaanbaatar, because indirectly this will be also a contribution to the reduction of the air pollution here in Ulaanbaatar.
That's the most need. Do you hear anything about the power station number 5 instead of the power station number 3? If there's any German technology who has expert with connection?
So far, only what I know is that the Asian Development Bank is preparing a feasibility study on the location, on the size, and the outlay of this power plant number 5. As soon as this is done, I think a tender will be prepared, hopefully an international tender, and then automatically German companies will certainly be in the ring actually for this tender.
Question is now, as a person who is living in Ulaanbaatar city, how do you deal with the winter air in the city?
Yeah, this is really the biggest challenge, how to cope with the air pollution here in Ulaanbaatar. And this is, it's not so cold, it's the foul air actually, which is a major problem. And I think it's very urgent that the municipality of Ulaanbaatar, the government and all agencies which are responsible undertake something to reduce the air pollution, because this is a problem also for public health here in Ulaanbaatar. And I've just read a World Bank study according to which actually the health cost makes up 8% of the gross national product of Mongolia at the moment, because respiratory diseases, particularly amongst the younger generation, teens and children, is extremely high. So the health cost is enormous, and we are talking about the future of Mongolia, future generations. I think definitely something should be done against the air pollution.
Unfortunately, we Mongolians, and in particular Mongolian politicians, understand the urgency when the winter comes. When the spring comes, we forget it.
Yeah.
So probably it is another circle.
This is very human.
Human, okay. Thank you. You're very human. Ambassador, Thank you very much for coming to my
Thank you
program.
very much for inviting me.
And I hope Mongolians now have more updated from your first hand from German ambassador. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.